Welcome to Sister Sister, a special series of the Teaching Peace podcast from Brooklyn Peace Center. I'm your host, Zipporah Storbakken. In part one of our conversation, we heard from Sister Nina Benedicta Krapic about her work in church communications, the historic collection of Pope Leo, and the church's evolving role in time of disruption. In the second part, we turn the focus inward towards Sister Nina's personal journey, her call to religious life, and her commitment to healing at the margins. From supporting survivors of violence, to ministering to migrants, to choosing Edith Stein as her spiritual guide. This is a story of mercy, justice, and deep listening. Let's continue the conversation. Let's start with a few icebreaker questions. What's one thing you've read, watched, or listened to lately that's really stayed with you?
Thank you for this great question, Zipporah. Well, you know what? I'm gonna just start with today, okay? Because today, of course, I read the gospel in the morning, and every day I remain with a passage or with a word. And today was "My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior," which was just made me reflect on the joy that God wants us to live with. And the second thing, I was just scrolling before talking to you, so I ran into some Maya Angelou quote where she says that humility is for her when she goes out on the stage and she brings all the people with her who, she says, who have dared to love me. Okay. And I reflected back on, oh, well, yeah, that is the truth. When you know that what you have is given to you by God. And the second thing is the investment of all the people who ever loved you and who taught you something. And when you go like composed from all of them, like a painting, you go out to the world. So it was a really beautiful quote. Yeah.
Wow, that's a good quote. Yeah. And if you could sit down with any woman, past or present, for a deep conversation, who would it be?
Okay, I have one pop cultural choice and I and I have a serious choice. As I spoke to Jason, I would love to talk to Mother Teresa if I could. I would love to talk to Edith Stein, of course, who is my saint protector. And in pop culture, believe it or not, I would love to talk to Cher because I listened to a lot of Cher when I was a kid. She marked my childhood and she takes me back to all of these beautiful memories from my childhood. So I think it would just be very cool to have a coffee with Cher.
Yes, I agree too. She was
Yeah.
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
So, last icebreaker question. What is something unexpected about working in church communications that people wouldn't guess?
When people talk about the Vatican and communications, people think it's probably like we're all very serious and everything. But in our office, there is a lot of jokes and people are very, very funny. So it was what surprised me too, how very joyful and funny people are.
Thank you for those. Now let's move into the deeper parts of your story. You've walked many paths: law student, journalist, advocate. What first drew you to religious life?
I think the short answer is community. I was born in a traditional Catholic family and I just learned about the rules and that I should go to the mass, but no one ever taught me about relationship with God. So I couldn't really fully live it. And so I left the church. But then when I started working very early, about your age, Sephora, on the radio, and there was Catholics there. So it was the first time that I actually met people who live in a living relationship with God and the way they live their communion. I was just, for me, that was something out of this world, something that I have never seen before. So they forgave each other differently, they loved each other differently, they welcomed people differently. And you could not say it's something they did themselves, but you could see that that is been given to them. They convinced me, okay, their God is really real God, and I should probably go back to church. So step by step, I started going back to the church and the sacraments and everything. And the last final part that drew me to religious life, even though I never thought I was going to be a sister, I was working like that for a long time, was my pilgrimage to Medjugorje, which is a very famous pilgrimage place near my country. And there I just felt that God has changed my heart and that I should just give it all. Stop acquiring things for myself, but just give it all out for God and for the people of God.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. You chose the name Benedicta after Edith Stein. For listeners unfamiliar with her, who she was, and why does her story resonate with you?
Mhm. So, Edith Stein, she's also known as Benedicta of the Cross. That's why I took the name Benedicta after Nina. She was a German Jewish philosopher and a Catholic convert, and at the end, a Carmelite nun and a martyr. So she was born in a Jewish family in Islau, which was then a part of Germany, and she was a brilliant student. She earned the doctorate in philosophy. She worked with Edmund Husserl, who is the founder of phenomenology, and she was one of the first women back then to receive a PhD in philosophy and to work in such an academic position. She resonated with me because she was searching for the truth all the time. Okay, so I did the same thing, right? She was searching in philosophy and an academic career, and she was in pursuit all the time. And I felt, okay, that happened with me too. I was searching for the truth because I wanted to deliver the truth to the people who were listening to us, to the people who are reading our news. And I thought that's the only thing that's worth living for, right? But the problem was that I didn't know what the truth was, and or to better say, who is the truth, right? And Edith Stein, she started discovering that with her friends, just as I did. Okay, so there was an episode where she comes to her friend's house after her husband dies. So it was a young couple, and she thought she was going to come there and find a devastated person who just lost her loving husband. But she came and she found faith in eternal life. She found hope. And she said, oh, this is something completely different. And she actually converted when she was reading the book of Saint Teresa of Avila, and also in her friend's house. And she read it, I think, in one night, and she closed it and she said, this is the truth. Okay. And then she got baptized at the age of 30. And with time, she became a Carmelite nun. But since she had Jewish roots, she was persecuted by the Nazis. Okay. They came to the convent and they said, you're going with us to the concentration camp. And it was so courageous from her because at that moment she took her sister, her sister was with her, and she said, let's go, Rosa. We're going to die for our people and God. And she was willing to sacrifice her own life. So she came to the concentration camp, and they described that it was like an angel was there because she was in service to all the others in the concentration camp. And then she was murdered in the gas chambers in 1942. And later on, Pope John Paul II proclaimed her saint and protector of Europe. And that's how, I mean, there's a lot of books that she wrote. She wrote on women. She combined philosophy and theology. And that part of combining academic work and immersement in the world together with religion, for me, it was just, okay, she's mine.
Wow, this is a powerful story.
Yeah.
Through your work with survivors, migrants, people in recovery, you've witnessed deep pain and profound resilience. What has that taught you about mercy, not just as an idea, but as a lived practice?
Mercy is motherhood. It taught me that. And when I first started working with people in need, I went to check for that word. What in the theological dictionary is mercy and love? Because I felt that this can only come from my motherhood. If I go to people as if I was a mother, okay? And I found that in Hebrew, mercy is rahamim, which means the womb, mother's womb. I was like, yeah, bingo, that's it. Mercy is like mother loving a child, and it can only come after you have experienced this from your relationship with God, when you know that you are loved as if you were in your mother's womb, completely protected, completely safe, completely loved, that you can do anything to separate from that love, right? And when I started working with people in need, I figured out, okay, this is also a gift from God. It doesn't come from me, because I cannot just make myself merciful, right? I can open up my heart for God to make me merciful toward other people. And there I learned that if I do that, if I let him do that, if I let him change my heart so everyone can fit in, right? That mercy and love, which are interconnected, it becomes the only cure. It's actually the only thing that can make you resilient, and it's the only thing that makes you survive. Because love is the only cure to all the wounds that we have.
Yeah.
And I figured that out when working with women and children who were victims of domestic violence. I would ask them, we would spend a year living together, and at the end of our being together, when they would have to move and we would find them an apartment so they could start their own life. And I would say, okay, what was the most important thing here for you? And then I figured out that all my legal work and everything else I did was not that important as the love. So they would tell me the most important thing was when we were all eating at the same table. When we were not at home, but a plate was still waiting because someone figured out that we're not here and that we need to eat when we come back. And that just these little deeds of love, thinking about another person, involving her completely as if they were your child, changes the roots inside of the person. As God's mercy changes us, that's how, with reflecting that mercy to other people, their lives can be changed. So that's what I learned.
Like living in community and like hospitality and intentional
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the role of women in the church is often discussed, but not always lived out fully. From your vantage point as a woman religious, what possibilities do you see for women's leadership, especially among sisters and lay women?
I was pretty surprised when I started working for the church institutions. I've never expected that there were so many women there, because I thought, okay, I just read about it, so I didn't have an experience. But for 10 years now, a couple of places I worked in the church, all the bosses I had were women. So things have shifted pretty much. Okay. So now, even at the leadership positions in the Vatican, you have women appointed. Step by step, we're here. Maybe at times in a different roles, but we're here. With the role of women in the church, from the position of a sister, I think that the problem doesn't lie anymore in some kind of documents or I don't know what. The problem lies in the perception. Because the question for me as a sister is, how do we perceive ourselves? And what do we expect from ourselves? Because still, we live in a culture where it's very unusual for a sister to do something out of the frame. Okay, so let's say when I studied political communication, I was like, well, how can a sister study that? You know, and I asked, but why not? So it would be all in the frame if we were in some kind of classical environment, or I don't know, teachers, or working in the kindergartens or whatever. It's okay if you play. A lot of things. Popular culture has a lot to do with it, because popular culture has showed us, like, sisters act, sisters play, sisters sing, and things like that. But things are not like that. But it also affected our perception of what we do. And I think it's still very unusual if you do anything out of that frame. So I think the real reform in the position of that women take in the church comes from the idea of, what do we want to do in the church? That needs to be clear. So if you want to do something, you get educated in that direction. But if you don't have a perception in what you want to do, you just go on the old way. So that is something that I think needs to be changed from the inside of the communities of sisters, for starters. And the other thing is that sometimes humility gets interpreted in a weird way. To stay in humility, you have to take the simplest jobs. I don't think that's the thing. I think that humility lies in recognizing your talents and then investing these particular talents that you have in the church and for the life for the good of the world, not grabbing them for yourself, but investing them. And God gave us such diverse talents that there's a place for everyone to do what they were born for. I really believe in that. I think also that the concept of humility as recognizing our talents and giving them out is something that we need to still work on.
Yes. Yes, I absolutely agree because like so often women are asked to be like, humble in places of position and power or areas
Yeah,
they're not. So it's so important for women, especially young women, all women
yeah.
actually, like walk in their power and everything and do it unto God because it's not humble to invest in yourself.
Yeah,
God
of
would
course.
want you to do that.
If
And
you have the responsibility, if you have the talent, therefore you have also the responsibility to work with it, to do something with it, to make it even bigger. If you have a talent in communication, work, go, educate, give that out to the world, give it out.
what would you say to a young woman, maybe a law student or journalist who feels a deeper call stirring but doesn't yet know what to do with it?
Discerning is a very important gift, a very important also skill that we can work on with God. So recognizing what comes from us, what comes from God, what is a temptation. And this is something that is beautifully described by Saint Ignatius of Loyola. It's a beautiful method where you pray over your decisions. And I think discernment is the right way because finding our mission in the world, I think, is the most important thing. I think that answer must come from God and you, that it's something that comes from that relation. And I don't think it can be found in, I don't know, a lot of conversations or advice from other people or something like that. It first needs to come from clarity with you and God and then be shared with other people and always very realistically. I would say that go for a discernment, a long discernment, which doesn't have to, these decisions are not made from today to tomorrow, but they're process, they are fruit of discernment, of prayer.
As a sister speaking to sisters everywhere, habits or no habits, what's one word or message you'd want to offer anyone trying to live with courage and heart right now?
Mm. Well, this is the phrase that I often say, and it's don't be afraid to love. Always, always, no matter what, choose to serve others with love. And that's a bingo. That's a bingo.
Sister Nina, thank you for this meaningful conversation.
Thank you, Zipporah. It was so great to be here with you today.
Sister Nina's story reminds us that peace isn't abstract, it's lived in hospitals and shelters, on airwaves and picket lines, in monasteries and migration centers. Thank you for joining us for this special two-part conversation. If this episode moved you, share it with someone you love and leave us a review wherever you listen. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep building peace.